Coming up on Diplomatic Channel, U.S. President-elect Joe Biden widens his lead over Donald Trump as the incumbent insists that he won the election. The United Nations expresses worry over conflict in Ethiopia's Tigray region as Amnesty International says scores of civilians have been killed in the crisis. Russia and Turkey sign an agreement to set up joint center for peacekeeping in Nagorno-Karabakh. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shoboale. U.S. President-elect Joe Biden has won the state of Georgia, the first Democratic candidate to do so since 1992. The win solidifies Mr. Biden's victory, giving him a total of 306 votes in the Electoral College.
Be going to a lockdown. Hopefully the whatever happens in the future, who knows which administration it will be. I guess time will tell, but I can tell you this administration will not go to a lockdown.
It seems President Donald Trump is gradually coming to terms with his election defeat, although there is no indication that he plans to go quietly. His supporters held a large protest in Washington, D.C., chanting "Stop the Steal" as they demonstrated against unfounded claims of election fraud. Members of the president's cabinet also remain defiant.
We have what appears in some sense to be an immaculate deception. Clearly the president won this election and was leading on election day, and then after election day, somehow in these key battleground states, they got just enough votes to catch up to the president. What we need to do is go through the process as we did with Gore, Bush v. Gore, and see where we get. Until we do that, our assumption is the second Trump term. We think he won that election, and any speculation about what Joe Biden might do, I think, is moot at this point.
There will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration. All right, we're ready. The world is watching what's taking place here. We're going to count all the votes. When the process is complete, there'll be electors selected. There's a process. The Constitution lays it out pretty clearly.
Nevertheless, U.S. President-elect Joe Biden is undeterred by President Donald Trump's refusal to concede. He has appointed top Democratic official Ron Klain as his chief of staff and assistant to the president. Klain is one of Mr. Biden's closest confidants and first worked for the Democrats in 1989 when he was a U.S. senator. He was also in charge of the Barack Obama administration's response to the Ebola health crisis in 2014 when Mr. Biden was vice president. China's foreign ministry on Friday, November the 13th, extended its congratulations to the president-elect and vice president-elect Kamala Harris, saying that Beijing respects the choice of the American people. But it seems Russia is not too excited about a Biden presidency.
If we make a projection of what the U.S. foreign policy can be, should Joseph Biden get inaugurated, judging from the announcements, it looks similar to what President Obama has been pursuing. It seems natural, taking into account that Biden used to be his vice president. It refers to the climate policy, the return to the Paris agreements. It also refers to the Iranian nuclear program.
Pressure is growing on Mr. Trump, a Republican, to acknowledge Mr. Biden's victory and help prepare the transition from one administration to another. The president has launched a flurry of legal challenges in key states and leveled unsubstantiated allegations of widespread electoral fraud, but his efforts suffered setbacks in Arizona, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, where judges have turned down his request.
In the meantime, former U.S. ambassador to Nigeria, Ambassador Robin Sanders, says the U.S.-Africa relationship will be a major focus for the new Biden-Harris administration. Our correspondent in Washington, D.C., Maria Bird, brings us that interview.
Can you give us some insight into what a Biden win will mean for the rest of the world and specifically the continent of Africa?
I think the main thing that a Biden win will do is to re-engage in a global manner that we are known for. I think that the Biden administration will really focus on reestablishing all of our partnerships and reinvigorating them as well. I do see us, and President-elect Biden has said this, rejoining a lot of international organizations or becoming more engaged, certainly, joining the climate change agreement, rejoining the WHO. I'm hoping also that it means something specific for Nigeria in terms of supporting Dr. Konjo-Iweala for the WTO SecGen position. So I'm hoping that, so it will be about re-engaging globally, re-engaging differently, and certainly with the focus on Africa, because you have a lot of experts around the Biden team that really know Africa really well and know Nigeria specifically well as well.
We know that the U.S. and Africa have had a long history of relationships. And so as we move into potentially a new administration, what can Africa learn from this process? What lessons can they take from the U.S. democracy?
Well, I think we are in really uncharted territory for the United States right now. It's very much uncharted territory for us right now in terms of the challenges that we are facing in the transition. But I think we have to take a page from what President-elect Biden has said, that he will be a president for all Americans, that the transition is going forward. We see that today with a full announcement of his entire transition team, including the team lead for the Department of State is a Africa hand, the former Assistant Secretary for Africa, Ambassador Thomas Greenfield is leading the Department of State team. So I see for Africa a re-engagement and a partnership that we haven't had for a little while. Certainly peaceful transitions are key, and recognizing that that when you become a president, you are the president for the entire nation, not for a particular political party. And I think Biden underscoring that is probably the greatest lesson that we can provide for not only our country, but certainly everybody looking at our country at this particular time.
Thank you for that. I know that these are, as you said, these are uncharted waters. And so as we look at what we're seeing with the current administration and President Trump's refusal to concede, what does that mean for the U.S. and what does that really mean for the rest of the world?
I mean, there are processes in place. Today I was asked to sign on to a letter that is encouraging the General Service Administration to certify the president-elect so that he and his team can begin to really access the funds that are there to support the transition. There are processes that are legal ones that are already underway. I assume that there will be others that will come on board as well. And those can continue without impeding the steps for transition. And I think that's the key message. Yes, if the legal process that individuals want to pursue are there, but you don't impede the transition. You don't impede the peaceful transition of power or the steps to get there. So certainly the first step is really getting the transition funds released from the General Service Administration so that the transition can be funded. I think that President-elect Biden and his team are doing all the right things to keep everyone calm, to keep everyone focused, to say again that he is the president for all Americans, despite whatever party he comes from. And I think that you see more and more each day the opinion polls leaning in that direction, where today the polls said that 84% of Americans are accepting the result of the election.
That's what it says. If I can ask you just one more piece, because we haven't really hit on what will be the top priorities as it relates to Africa with the Biden-Harris administration. What do you believe his top priorities will be, and where will Africa sit in the areas of priority for this administration?
I think given the number of Africa hands and Africa experts that are on the Biden team, that Africa will be really not necessarily, the first thing on the top, but certainly I would say, very close to the pyramid at the top. And I say that not only because of the expertise, the Africa expertise that they have on hand, but I say that because of the importance of the continent writ large in the decisions that we all make for the partnership. And because this administration believes so much in partnership. I see that a stepped up effort on partnership, whether it's on investment and trade, whether it's on further democracy building, whether it's on further engagement in international arena, such as the WTO and the WHO. I see all of that happening. So I think the expectation will be that we'll go back to our core values of democracy, engagement, partnership, and a focus on trade and investment, and certainly a support for challenging issues like food security, like health issues that the pandemic has really underscored, and certainly I think election focus.
Well, Ambassador Sanders, as always, we truly appreciate you and all of your work, and we know we'll definitely be hearing more from you in the coming weeks. So thank you so much for joining us.
Always my pleasure to be on Channels, and great to see you again.
Good to see you. Thank you.
The UN Human Rights Commissioner is warning that reports of mass killings in Ethiopia would, if verified, amount to war crimes.
Civilians fleeing fighting in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region tell stories of bombing by government jets, shooting on the streets, and killings with machetes as they join thousands of refugees crossing into neighboring Sudan.
My mother, I left her in the church. She's an elderly woman. My brother is blind. We left him there as well. There is no food or water. Everyone ran away. And on the way, we found murdered people with weapons and axes and knives. That's why we ran. What were we to do? We want to save ourselves.
UNHCR tells us they are working with authorities in Sudan to help more than 7,000 refugees who fled Ethiopia in the past 2 days. This obviously following the clashes in Tigray region. UNHCR and local authorities are screening and registering people who are arriving in Sudan. More refugees from Ethiopia are expected to arrive in neighboring countries. Our UNHCR colleagues are stepping up their preparations for emergency relief by working with governments and partners.
But for the Ethiopian government, its military offensive against the leaders of Tigray province is proceeding successfully.
Attack on the National Defense Force is tantamount to an attack on the sovereignty of the country, which cannot be tolerated. I'm sure you may have heard that recently they also committed horrific crimes against civilians based on their ethnicity that have been residing in a place called Maikadra. It will end as soon as the criminals are disarmed, legitimate administration is restored, and fugitives apprehended and brought to justice.
The United Nations is, however, worried that the conflict could spiral out of control and that war crimes may have already been committed.
Turning to Ethiopia, our humanitarian colleagues say they remain concerned about the ongoing tensions in Tigray region and their impact on civilians. We, along with our partners, are working with the authorities to ensure the protection of civilians and humanitarian workers, continued access to people in need of assistance, and availability of funding given increasing needs. UNHCR tells us they are working with authorities in Sudan to help more than 7,000 refugees who fled Ethiopia in the past 2 days. This obviously following the clashes in Tigray region. UNHCR and local authorities are screening and registering people who are arriving in Sudan. More refugees from Ethiopia are expected to arrive in neighboring countries. Our UNHCR colleagues are stepping up their preparations for emergency relief by working with governments and partners.
Earlier this month, Ethiopia sent the army into its Tigray region, where it also declared a 6-month state of emergency after Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed accused the regional government of attacking national troops. The operations that started on Wednesday, November the 4th, are a major escalation of tensions between Mr. Abiy and Tigray. The region accounts for just 5% of the population, but is wealthier and more influential than other regions. The conflict in Tigray has killed hundreds, sent refugees flooding into Sudan, and raised fears it may draw in Eritrea or pressure Ethiopia's commitment to an African force opposing Al-Qaeda-linked militants in Somalia. It may also blemish the reputation of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, who won a Nobel Peace Prize for a 2018 peace pact with Eritrea and who has won praises for opening Ethiopia's economy and easing a repressive political system.
Welcome back to the program. The UN Human Rights Commissioner is warning that reports of mass killings in Ethiopia would, if verified, amount to war crimes. This comes after Amnesty International reported that scores of civilians had been killed in a town in Tigray State. For more on this story, I'm now being joined by a professor of French and Francophone African Studies at the University of Lagos, Professor Victor Ariole. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. So what do you make of the military offensive launched by the Ethiopian government on the Tigray region?
I assume that it is a self-defense mechanism. Having been told or having allowed the Central Parliament to remove immunity from their 39 top officials who are the ruling group of that region, including the president, it means that any of the 39 could be a target of elimination by the central government. So the region will be very, very much interested in defending their leaders. Hence, the need for them to summon their militias to be ready and attack the central government in whichever way they come, so as to save their own self-determination will, which is part of what 1995 Constitution stated for them, that all the 9 regions in Ethiopia, they have rights for self-determination. And having right for self-determination means that the central government has no right to impose any rule that could be detriment to their own survival. And so, launching military offensive against them will require them also to be ready to defend themselves. And we know that almost every region in Ethiopia have their own militias. It's not even in Ethiopia. Africa seems to be everywhere the same. Each one has one kind of militias defending one kind ethnic group or the other, which are all wrong. It cannot help Africa get anywhere. Anyway, but for now, what is happening in Ethiopia requires intervention of supranational powers like AU and United Nations so as to avoid genocide in that country.
Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has rejected peace talks with the region's leaders who have called on the African Union to intervene in this matter. How should the international community react to this crisis?
Abiy Ahmed has rejected peace talks because the president of the region knows that the Tigrayans are targets for elimination, being known as the most industrious and most determined region or group or people in Ethiopia. Others are very, very afraid when they decide to embark on any insurrection, having known that in 1991, the insurrection toppled the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, and the fear of such repeat is what the central government wants to avoid. And as you know, Tigrayans are very, very determined people, and they are also in Eritrea as well as in some part of Sudan, not completely in whole, but at least some part. So these are people who have decided to remain in Ethiopia, notwithstanding that Eritrea, with their own Tigrayans, are also afraid of the Tigrayans in Ethiopia. So there is a need to really take care of the Tigrayans that are in Ethiopia, and the AU and United Nations ought to come in and save them before genocide happens. So the peace talk that AU want to initiate must be allowed to take place. Otherwise, there will be escalation, and the escalation will go into Eritrea as well as Sudan. And no one expects refugee outflow from Ethiopia to go into disturbing both Sudan, Eritrea, and even down other eastern countries of Africa. So it is time for AU and United Nations to seriously intervene.
Well, there are reports of Eritrean forces fighting alongside the Ethiopians against the Tigrayans, a claim which both sides have denied. How does Eritrea come into this matter?
Eritrea is known to have been once in Ethiopia. Now, if they have decided to secede and be independent, it is doubtful that they are coming in to help the central government to attack the Tigrayans will have any beneficial effect on that region. It will escalate issues in that region, because the Tigrayans are not only in Ethiopia, it is known, they are also in Eritrea. So it will now become somehow ethnic war. And we know in Africa, anything that has to do with ethnicity could be very, very conflagration tended and must be avoided. And what is more, these people known as the Tigrayans have been the ones who dominated once the political landscape of Ethiopia. It's only the arrival of Abiy Ahmed that made them become marginalized. And the same Abiy Ahmed has gone further to propose to the parliament a union type of government as against the federal government they are running. And if eventually this union type of government is allowed, it means they will really do everything to deal with the Tigrayans. And it is not expected if indeed Ethiopia is running a federal type of government. And the federal type of government does not mean that a given region or a central region will impose its own will in toto on the other region. These are things to be avoided in Africa, and it is high time African Union started working towards stopping such conflagrations.
Professor Victor Ariole, thank you so much for joining us on Diplomatic Channel. In other news, Turkey and Russia have signed an agreement to establish a joint center to coordinate efforts for monitoring a ceasefire in the Nagorno-Karabakh region. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan says Ankara will also participate in a peacekeeping force, but a senior Turkish security source says it would be sending observers and not peacekeepers. The ceasefire between Azerbaijan and Armenia was announced on Tuesday, November 10, ending the worst fighting in the region in decades and celebrated as a victory in Azerbaijan and its ally Turkey. But in Armenia, thousands of people protested in the capital Yerevan, demanding the resignation of Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, whom they regard as a traitor for signing the ceasefire deal. And that's Diplomatic Channel this week. Do remember to send your questions, comments and suggestions to any of the addresses showing on your screen. I'm Teniola Shobowale. Bye for now.